you know, CRM infrastructure, whether it be any type of CRM. And these tools together, you also have a website or a blog. These tools together really comprise of your marketing mix, of the different things that you're using to engage with your customers on. So now if you look at each one of those individual tools, they're usually a tool in itself. So that tool, that email tool, is an email tool, and it does email very well. That CRM is something that the sales team uses, and it does its job effectively. It lets them log in information, it lets them keep up with calls, and it lets forecasting happen. You've also got your website, which allows people to come and get an online presence and allows you to have an online presence. You've also got social media, which allows you to engage digitally across a lot of different mediums and metrics to engage with your customers. Now with that, each one of those tools does what it's supposed to do. What they don't do is share information easily across platforms. You can't easily send an email and then see exactly which prospects came to your website driven from that email. You can't easily look inside the CRM and see what web pages a prospect has looked at. You can't easily go into Google Analytics and see an individual and see exactly what pages they're looking at that time. So what we have is a silo effect. And the reason we have this is because over the past 10 or so years since we've been doing a lot of online marketing, we've been developing specific tools to solve specific problems. And all of this together has created one problem, and we call that the silo effect. And that silo effect really means that each one of these tools does what it's supposed to do, but it doesn't share information across different platforms. So what this leaves us with is we still have the same goals. We're still trying to generate new leads. We're still trying to prove ROI. But it's very difficult to prove ROI when you can't track a lead across all these different platforms. If we wanted to look at ROI from an email blast, for instance, what we would normally be looking at is we would send an email. Now, getting that email can bring its own challenges. We might have to import and export from multiple different databases just to even get a list to email out to. Once we then email out that email, it's then going to be driving people to our website, for example. Now, there's no easy way to then look at that report inside of Google Analytics and say, all right, Joe from Coca-Cola is now on our website, and he was driven from that email. That's hard enough in itself to just do that basic tracking of an email to the website. After that, then let's say, all right, now that Joe becomes a lead because he fills out that form on our website, we would normally just pass that lead over and say, all right, sales team, here's the lead because Joe filled out a form, hence he is sales ready. That's another fallacy. Just because the person fills out the form, that does not mean he's sales ready. Because now what happens is we've given a lead over to the sales team. That sales team has said, hey, great, the person's filled out a form. I'm going to try to call him right away. Salesperson calls a couple of times only to find out that Joe doesn't respond back to that phone call. Reason being is that Joe had an interest, but he was not necessarily sales ready or ready to talk to a salesperson. So what we've done is we've passed that lead over. Sales now is frustrated at us because we've passed over a lead that is not sales ready. But the thing is that we used the best technology we had. We knew that Joe filled out a form, hence we know he's got interest. We think it's the salesperson's job then to figure out what level of that interest it is. But the sales team has got another problem. They've got all these leads to manage, and they're being judged on quota. How many deals can they close this quarter? So they're inherently only going to work with those leads that are most sales ready, the ones that are responding to them. So what we now have is those leads that fall into that black hole. That's one problem we've got with the silo effect. This other problem we've got is now ROI tracking. Let's go back to this initial problem. Right now that we've got this person on the website, we've passed this lead over, what if that lead was to then convert and then become sales ready and then close? For us to track that, it would be very, very difficult. We might say, hey, that lead filled out that form for that white paper. So we might attribute that lead to that white paper if we can then mark on that record somehow and have that record flow to the opportunity. Another way that a lot of marketers do ROI reporting is to say, hey, we've spent X thousands of dollars or millions of dollars this year, quarter, month, whatever you're looking at on a time basis. And then pull in the revenue change. How much is the revenue change this quarter past the last quarter? And say that must then equal our ROI. Very subjective numbers. It's not very granular. You're going to have a very hard time getting into the granular ability to say, all right, which email campaign was more effective than another? Which one do we need to continue to run? Which keywords are driving more ROI than others? What you start finding is that, hey, we've been doing a lot of SEO, a lot of paid search, a lot of email marketing, a lot of social. And combined together, it's increased this much. But then it's very tough to then go back and say, all right, now how do we optimize? How do we know which keyword do we need to be optimizing or doing more SEO for or less SEO for? And it becomes a guessing game. And that's because none of these tools really have the ability to pass that information back and forth. So the first case for marketing automation is to really say, all right, now that we've got these siloed tools, marketing automation is the concept of combining these tools with one single platform. And what this allows for is now visibility across all channels and mediums. And this is the first big thing that marketing automation does. So to get a good idea, marketing automation is a platform that allows a marketer to go into one application and execute emails, have automated capabilities that do automated lead management, lead scoring, things of that nature. Also get into automated lead nurturing, then full integration into the CRM. Because it's one platform that accomplishes everything from emailing, tracking on the website, engagement with social, engagement with mobile, as well as integration to the CRM, it's a single source of data that touches all of these different problems. So as opposed to us having multiple silo tools, we can just have one tool that now has a single database of information. And what that really gives us, the first thing it gives us is visibility. We can now track a person as an individual. What we used to use as visibility was a tool like Google Analytics, or what we would call a macro tracking tool. That tool would normally show us how many thousands of people came to our website. What was the bounce rate? What was the average duration of a person on that site? It would give us an average of a person, but it couldn't show us the person. It would not say Joe spent an hour and 45 minutes and Sally spent 5 minutes. It would say the average is X, Y, and Z. But now what we can see is with one tool, being a marketing automation platform, being tied into all these different channels, we can, first off, generate a list. Because we're tied to that CRM, we can say, give me all of the VPs in New Jersey. Grab that list, and now we can then easily execute that list through an email campaign. Say, all right, send an email out to those individuals because those two are tied together. The next thing that we can do is then track effectively and get that visibility. Once that email goes out, we're going to see the normal responses, opens, bounces, and clicks. I don't want you guys to concern yourself with open, bounces, and clicks much in the future. Those metrics are still going to be metrics that you will utilize, but what's more important is things that we can't see yet and that you'll be able to see with marketing automation. What's more important, how many people opened my email? Or what's more important, the person that opened the email and then went to my website and looked at the pricing page. That is ultimately more important to know about, because now what we can see is, all right, we know an individual, Joe, opened that email, went to my website, went to my pricing page. That's infinitely more relevant for me in two ways. One is now I know exactly who is showing sales-ready interest. Now I can say, all right, if Joe then fills out a form and Sally fills out a form, but Joe looked at the pricing page and Sally didn't look at the pricing page, I can now say which lead is more sales-ready than the other. And what we can do with this is we can then start using scoring models. And this is where the concept of lead scoring really comes into play. It's because you can touch all these different channels, and because we have one single database that allows for automations, we can now start creating scoring models to then say when is somebody sales ready versus when is somebody not sales ready. And this is how we then solve that problem of when we pass a lead over to the sales team, how do we know that it's ready to be talked to by a salesperson? There's alarming statistics of about 70 to 80% of leads that get passed over to a salesperson are not sales ready. And that's because a lead is a lead is a lead is a lead, when that's not true. If you think about your own individual day, when you go and engage with content, you're doing research on any type of anything, doing any type of research, whether it's for business or for consumer. You do research in different stages. Just because you go and do something does not equal you being sales ready. Just like we have a buyer life cycle on the sales side of the house, there's the same marketing life cycle for a consumer. You're going to go through a life cycle of a prospect. You're going to have a period where you have no idea you even have a pain point. Then you're going to go through a cycle of, all right, figuring out you have a pain point and there's a need there. Then you're going to go through a cycle of researching, all right, what do I need to, and what is the best way for me to look at solving this need? There are a lot of options, figuring out your options. What are your options? Then going into saying, all right, what is the best option, and then figuring out solutions within inside of that option. That whole concept is foreign to us as a marketer because we don't have this visibility. We didn't have the ability to say, all right, now we know Joe is in that research stage, or Joe is just figuring out options. Once we get that visibility, then we have the ability to say, all right, now we know where our prospects are in that marketing life cycle. Now we know how to nurture them through that life cycle. We now know when they are sales ready and then can pass them directly into that CRM. And that is really the major concept of marketing automation. It's this visibility across all of these different channels and different technologies that really gives us that insight into who are our prospects, where are they in that marketing cycle, what do we need to do to them to get them to that next step, and then have the visibility to then follow them all the way through. So now when we get back to the end of the day and say, all right, let's do ROI reporting, it's instantly there because we can track that lead all the way through the CRM as well as know exactly what campaigns we're engaged with. So we can see what campaign brought that lead in, what campaign moved that person from each step in the marketing cycle to the next step, what campaign pushed that prospect into an opportunity stage. And then once that person then closed, then attribute the revenue back to each one of those campaigns to see the exact ROI off of that individual campaign. It's something that's really revolutionary when you think about it. And it's combining and saying, all right, let's move away from a siloed approach to a tool that does one specific thing, to looking at this in a holistic approach and saying we need to be touching all of these campaigns and sharing all of this data. Big data is something that we all hear about. We're all talking about the concept of big data, and this is really big data for a marketer. And the ability to touch all of these different places and have that single database gives us that visibility into that big data. Now, what can we do with that big data? We can then leverage that big data with technology. And this is really where we get into the concept of being able to automate. And this is really where the term marketing automation comes from, is powering a technology to utilize that data. Now that we've got that data, we've got insight that we never had before. We can follow individuals. We can see exactly who they are, exactly what they're engaging with. We can build models on the back end that are the automation aspect. These models then allow us to be relevant. The whole concept here is if we are relevant, we're going to increase engagement rates regardless. Relevancy on a non-automated standpoint is usually thought of by our copy. We usually try to be relevant through our subject lines, through our copy, through our content. And yes, it is very, very important. But it's also important to know when is that relevant. And if you don't have that technology to follow that person and to break down that marketing cycle, you can send an email to your entire database. And it's going to be ignored by a large majority of that database and only engaged with a small minority. And what we then see from that is a very low engagement rate because we're trying to push one mass message to everybody when it's only applicable to a small market within our small segment within our marketplace. However, if we now start to say, all right, now that we've got this visibility, as opposed to sending that email to everybody, let's just send that email to the people who it's relevant to, whether it's relevant by stage, whether it's relevant by score, whether it's relevant by interest. What if we have multiple product types? How do we know who's interested in what product types? It's through that behavioral-based tracking that we just talked about, that visibility that we have. If you guys can see on the screen, 18 times more. If we send relevant messages, we're going to be 18 times more relevant and generate 18 times more revenue than a general broadcast blast email. So if you're thinking about email marketing currently as newsletters, as email blasts to our entire database, that's now in the past. That's old. What you're going to see from that old marketing is that we've had the same message pushed out to our entire demographic. But that entire demographic is not in the same boat. They're in very different places. Just like if we go back to that concept of marketing stages, salespeople use this concept. Why can't we? Salespeople look at a buyer in different stages of the buying cycle and engage in some different content, have different conversations with that person based on that stage that they're in. And that's effectively how they move somebody through the sales cycle. If we told a salesperson that, you know what, why don't you try to just give the same message to everybody? They would laugh at you. They would say that's a horrible way to get somebody into a closed deal. You know, that's the same way we're doing marketing. We're doing it in an antiquated model. That's why marketing automation is being adopted by so many people and giving such huge returns on investment. It's because it's looking at it in a different way. It's looking at it in the appropriate way. There's an old analogy. If you, and you know, whether you are married or not, if you go on a date with somebody, you don't usually get married the next day. It's a pretty standard concept. There's a period of courting, and that period has a lot of different stages in it, and it's got different stages for each person. And it's the exact same thing as marketing or any buying cycle. There's different stages, and you don't take somebody from having no concept and no clue to a closed sales-ready deal the next day. There's a period that we need to be relevant to them by different stages. Now, the next big thing that we're going to talk about with marketing automation is what it allows you to do from an optimization standpoint. The main concept that we've looked at so far is visibility. It's saying, all right, now let's look at who our people are and where they are and be relevant to them. There's a whole other side to marketing automation, which is really back-end optimization. These terms are lead management, lead nurturing. What we currently have is a system where we've got, and I was just talking with some people about this yesterday, every marketer, we all had dreams when we first, before we had our real jobs, we all had dreams of grandeur. We all said, hey, you know what? I want to be a brand manager. I want to work with copy. I want to work with creative. That was kind of our goal. We all have a very large sense of artistic ability inside of us. But we were rational. We said, hey, I want to be an artist, but artists don't make a living. I've got to find some way to make a living. Oh, great, I'll be a marketer. I'm going to get to work with cool brands. I'm going to get to do cool stuff, all this fun things. And then once we got in our job, we found that the creative is a part of our job, but more so than not, especially on the B2B side, we find ourselves creating lists. We find ourselves building email templates and creating, executing email campaigns. We find ourselves importing and exporting. We find ourselves doing manual lead triage, looking at every person that fills out a form and manually figuring out if this person's sales ready or not. And that's taking up more part of our day than this creative side that we really, really wanted when we got out of school and what we thought we were going to be doing. And that's the other big side of marketing automation. All those manual tasks that we're doing can be automated with technology, and they can be automated with this marketing automation. That's the other large reason that people are adopting this technology. It's because now we can say, all right, what's more effective? I've got this asset. It's this person. It's you. You are the asset we're talking about. It's saying, all right, this person has a drive and a love for creating. But what we're really doing is making them a basic data entry person, taking lists, inputting data, taking a form, inserting that into the CRM. Now that we can automate all of that, we have a lot of things that happen. You can see, first off, 33 reduction in costs of generating sales-ready leads. That's because now you're not sitting in front of a computer manually doing data entry or manually creating lists or importing and exporting or scrubbing CSV files or keeping up with opt-outs or opt-ins. Now what you're doing is creating campaigns and leveraging that creative side that you really want to, and then automating all of that manual data entry through optimization or automations. What can these automations be? Automations could be all kinds of things. And I'm going to walk through, let's just go through a basic campaign, and let's walk through start to finish and just kind of conceptualize this. First thing we need to do to create a campaign is, first off, create a list. Creating a list usually means importing and exporting, whether it be from a database, a CRM, or some other third party. Well, with the automation, we can set up rules to say anytime somebody meets XYZ criteria, dynamically update this list. Conversely, anytime somebody meets XYZ criteria, remove them from these lists. Those things might be changes in behaviors. If somebody engages with a specific page, dynamically put them on this list. That's something we couldn't even do or couldn't even conceive of earlier because we couldn't figure out what pages people were on. Next thing we can do is say anytime somebody opts in or opts out, automatically remove them or add them. That was something we normally had to do manually. To take all the opt-outs every time from an email blast, add them to our global opt-out list to just keep up with our opt-outs. Now it's automatically going to happen for us. Other things we can automate. Let's talk about once that person then fills out that form, looking at those data points that they give us. looking at their past behaviors, automatically qualifying, is this lead sales ready, yes or no? So no longer do we have to do manual lead triage. We can automate that through a marketing automation platform. On top of that, let's take that a step further. Now that we've figured out who is sales ready and who's not sales ready, the next thing that we need to do is then do something with those people. We need to then pass those to the CRM. That normally meant going and taking that lead and manually typing it in the CRM. It's automated now. Notifying the sales rep that there's a new lead, automated now. What about those leads that aren't sales ready? Normally we would have to then put those back into the mix and then continue to email blast out to them. Not anymore. Automation allows for nurturing. Nurturing is a dynamic program that we can create that then allows a person to move through a life cycle of marketing interactions that's dynamic. So if they interact with a certain piece of that marketing, that whole operation then changes to meet their needs, to increase, to be more relevant. Once again, relevant, 18 times more engagement if it's relevant. Because all these things are automated, they're now going to be relevant. If we were to think about this conceptually, there is no way to do this without a technology. There is not enough people that you can hire to sit there and track every individual and then change every piece of communication. It's not possible. That is the key reason why this technology is being adopted. It's because we can do things that you just couldn't even conceive before, both from a behavioral tracking standpoint to an automating marketing campaign standpoint to passing leads into the CRM, so removing manual data entry. And then let's look at the final step, right? That final step is in reporting. What we used to have to do is go over into that CRM, grab all of that data, bring it back over, pull it into a program like Excel or some other database program, pull in all of our costs, and then manually generate Excel. I don't know about you guys, but I hate Excel. Excel is the bane of my existence. I have tried and tried and tried to learn how to use Excel, and I've really come to find one thing. The only people that are really good with Excel are accountants. Great with Excel. Everyone else should probably stay out of it. And many of you are probably going to say, yes, I hate Excel as well. It's not to say Excel is a bad program. It's just that it does so much stuff, I don't know how to do it. I need basics. I just need to do ROI. That's all I want. One basic report, ROI. I sent this email. How much revenue did it bring in? In my mind, it's a simple report. However, when I get into Excel, it becomes a complicated report to create. That's another big thing that marketing automation is doing. It's making reporting on your campaigns extremely easy. Once again, removing a large portion of my day and my frustration, getting me back to what I really wanted to do when I got into this job and letting me focus on my creative. Those are some other big reasons that marketing automation is really, really important. Optimizing those operations, really streamlining your marketing team to be very effective. Removing all that stuff that we don't really want to do that can be automated by technology and allowing us to focus on those things that are ultimately important. Creative is the ultimate importance in any marketing program. Over time, everyone got email. So how did you improve your email communications? You got more creative. Everyone had a website. So how do you make your website more engaging? You get creative. Everyone's got white papers. How do you make your white papers better? You get creative. Everyone's got marketing departments. How do you make your marketing more important? You get creative. How do you get that time back to be creative? You get marketing automation. Let's look at another thing, automating lifecycle engagements. We talked about this concept earlier that there are stages through a life cycle of marketing, just like there's stages in the buyer's life cycle. Well, in B2B specifically, there are a lot of very specific stages. First off, we need to understand that there are stages. Second thing we need to do is be able to track a person and to see what stage they're in. Once we can do those two things, we can then automate these life cycle engagements. This is what normally is called dynamic nurturing, lead nurturing, drip nurturing. They all mean the same thing. Dynamically engaging with somebody automatically based on their engagements and where they are. Meeting them where they want to be met, getting that email to them at the appropriate time with the appropriate message. That is the ultimate goal that we have, and that's what lead nurturing solves. Now, you can obviously read the statistic. Companies that excel in lead nurturing increase their number of sales-ready leads by 50%. This has nothing to do with increasing budget. That's the other big key thing here. We're not saying you need to increase budget to increase the number of sales-ready leads. We're saying leave your budget alone. Don't worry about the budget. Let's look at what we're doing with that budget. Let's optimize our campaigns. Let's optimize our programs. Optimize to increase. Right? If you're being judged based on ROI, If your budget increases, that means you've got to generate more leads. If your budget stays the same and you increase more leads, that's easy ROI increase. And I think a lot of us are all judged by the ROI on that investment or the return on that marketing dollars that we're given. And that's really a great way for us to show off our skills. So what is the basics of lead nurturing? Well, let's just say first off, like I said earlier, figure out who your individuals are. Figure out where they are. And then build these programs to meet them. The best part is you already know what these programs need to be and need to have in them. You already are creating content based around specific problems. You already know that if it's a VP, you speak this way or that way. You know if it's a user, you speak this way or that way. You know if they're a technical buyer, you show more of this than that. You know if they're a high-level C-level, you show more numbers than execution or tactical stuff. It's already in your framework. You already have all of this thought out. It's just not easy to execute. It's not easy to send an email that changes. So think about this, right? What we've got on the left-hand screen, you can see some emails, and there are some arrows changing things around. You can have entire programs. And now think about the different programs you can have. It's not just new lead generation that we can use this for. Think about all the different aspects. New lead generation is what most people think about. It's because it's kind of the sexiest thing to use, right? Because new leads is usually the hottest topic that we have to deal with. Think about other places. Think about now giving sales the ability to dynamically nurture lost deals. Think about all those leads that you had previously passed over that the salespeople never called on. Think about grabbing all that back, dynamically then nurturing that. We already spent that money to get that lead. Now let's really get that full value out of that lead. That's what a lot of these things are that we're talking about, is giving you that ability to go in, find those dollars you've already spent that aren't being utilized. Bring them back to life. Think about this. What about cross-selling and upselling? What if you sell multiple products? Well, first off, use your visibility. Go in, figure out where somebody is, use that behavioral tracking to figure out what other products somebody might be interested in. Use scoring to figure out the level of sales readiness, and then automate the communication to get them to that next step. That's the concept here. You've got the visibility with marketing automation. You've got that behavioral tracking with marketing automation. You've got that easy lead scoring with marketing automation. And you've got an easy way to get them step by step to where you want them. That's why companies are winning so big with marketing automation. It's integrated data with a single view. Inside of one record, you're going to see how they've engaged with Twitter. You're going to see how they've engaged with your website, how they've engaged with Facebook, how they engage with email. And you're now going to give this to a salesperson. So not is this only inherently good for the marketing department, but it's also inherently good for the sales department. Because what's our optimal goal? We're creating leads and passing them over to the sales team. That sales team now has got a lead. And half the time, they're going to complain to us that that lead wasn't sales ready because they didn't pick up the telephone. What happens when you get marketing automation is a shift. Marketing now changes and gives leads over. But sales now loves these leads for the following reason. What you used to give was a name and some demographic information and usually the trigger, right? They downloaded this piece of content, and that's all the marketer or the salesperson had to go on. So when they made a phone call, it was pretty basic. Hey, I noticed you downloaded that white paper. I'd love to talk with you. Oh, we're not really ready to buy. Click, and they hang up. Pretty standard scenario. Why was that? Well, it's that because that person was in that marketing cycle, and they really didn't get to the end yet. We just passed them over prematurely. So now, once that lead gets over to the salesperson's hands, they're going to have the full detail. They're going to know what keyword that person searched for initially. They're going to know how long they've been researching. They're going to know what content they've engaged with. What parts of your product are they interested in, because we can show that salesperson exactly what pages of the website they look at. Now that's extremely helpful for that salesperson to close that deal and close it more quickly. And that's really what we're talking about with integrated data for a single view. It's having that single view for marketing is great because you know now how to dynamically change your marketing. But it also benefits the sales team because now they can use that information in their selling process. Help them make better cold calls. Help them know how to make better follow-up emails. Help them to know when to make a phone call. Just because the prospect after the demo says, call me back in 2 weeks, that doesn't mean they really want to be called back in 2 weeks. They're just pushing that salesperson off. That salesperson then knows and is going to be able to watch. Just like we've got that behavioral tracking, there's now tools in marketing automation to now notify salespeople of that data in real time. Here's how it's used. You pass over a lead to a salesperson. Salesperson now gets that lead. Because of marketing automation, they can see all of the things that that prospect has done across every marketing channel and aspect. So now they know exactly who this person is, what they're engaging with. Salesperson then places a phone call out, sets up a demo. They run the demo or they don't run the demo. It's regardless. What happens next is that salesperson is now notified instantly anytime that individual, that prospect, engages again with marketing. What that now gives is that salesperson an excuse. It gives them the knowledge. It gives them the upper hand to know when to reach out and what to reach out about. This is changing the way sales organizations sell. Marketing automation has hugely been affecting both marketing and sales because of that key visibility. The final thing that we're going to look at is ROI. Integrated data means easy ROI. Track that lead from the moment it touches any campaign all the way until it closes in the CRM. Sales does nothing different but close that deal. Everything else is automatically brought back to you. Once again, automation. It's going to show you ROI on anything down to very granular details. ROI on any SEO keyword across any time range. That keyword you thought that was bringing in 100 leads a week, are those leads actually closing? That's a better question. Are they quality leads? That's the question we want to answer. It's not a quantity, it's a quality issue. Right? Are we passing over quality leads and are they being closed? If so, then let's put more money into that keyword. If not, let's stop SEOing that keyword. Same with paid search, SEM. We've got a lot of people clicking on this advertisement. Are those leads closing? Are they progressing? Are they good leads? That's what we really want to see. ROI on email. ROI on anything you want to track. It's incredible what you can get into now with granular visibility. And what does this allow for? It allows for two things. One, it allows for us to show our value to our organization. Our organization gives us a pile of cash every year and says, all right, we're going to trust you to do the best you can with this money to generate as many leads as you can. Now we can say, hey, here's what we did. We can optimize. We can show the ROI on everything. Why are marketers the first ones to get cut in any time it says layoff? It's because marketing is the hardest department to track value from. Because they give us a pile of cash, we pass over leads, and they think all of the job is done by the salespeople. They don't see the job that we do because it's been hard to track. Now we can track it, we can prove our value and prove our ROI. Now let's look at a couple case studies. One of the case studies we want to look at is a pretty big name, and that's why I want to look at them. It's Restaurant.com. Now, I'm not sure if Restaurant.com is popular over in Scotland or in the UK, but I'll give you a good idea of who they are and what they do. Restaurant.com is kind of a Groupon, living social type site. What they do is they've got two sides to a business, a B2B and a B2C side. The B2C side are consumers like you and me as an individual off work hours. We want to go eat somewhere. Well, I can go to Restaurant.com and I can buy a $25 card from Restaurant.com. What that gives me is $50 worth of value at multiple different restaurants, all the ones that have signed up for Restaurant.com. Or they might give me deals that they send to my inbox, just like a Groupon or Living Social or any of your local deal sites might do. Now, they're sending out millions and millions and millions of emails on a daily basis. What they just did is they said, all right, let's move from this spray and pray tactic to a sophisticated targeting system through automated email communications. What they did is they went in and they got relevant. They started getting into marketing automation. They use Pardot. They look at what are people's behaviors. How do we want to engage? How do we need to change our communication based on these behaviors and these engagements? What you can see is the easy case study. It's astounding, a 900% increase in revenue from automated campaigns. That is baffling. To think that you can go in and you can still get that kind of return is seriously incredible. Now, here's the reason why we can get these returns. There's two reasons. One is we're early in the adoption of this technology. When we first brought out email marketing way back in the day, we were seeing returns very similar to this. Because we could do email, we could bring and meet people on different mediums, get a huge engagement. The problem with email when it first came out is not everybody had email, so it was very hard to get them to engage with email if they don't have email. That's not the problem now. Everyone has email, including your 2-year-old kid. So now what we need to talk about is how do we then make email relevant again? And that's exactly what we're talking about. Is through using automation, through behavioral-based tracking, we're finding exactly who, we're finding what, And now we're knowing exactly when we need to engage and with what message is going to have the most impact. And that's how we see things like this 900% return. But now we also need to remember this is very early. This 900% return is not going to last forever. As more people adopt this technology, more people are going to be relevant, and hence that impact is going to slowly decrease just like it did with email marketing over time. It's the early adopters that are always going to have the largest or the lion's share of this ROI and these returns. Now, these returns will always be large. Will they be 900% large? I'm not going to say they're going to be that large forever, but they're going to be in the hundreds of percent for a good couple of years. The key here is if you want to take advantage of marketing automation, do it sooner than later, and you're going to see a larger return than you would later on. So here's the final thing. Here's another case study. This is one of my favorite case studies to talk about. This increase right here that we see 300%, this 300% is just from optimizing an already existing campaign that they were using with marketing automation. This company, and they're unnamed, they don't want me to use their name. They're very afraid that their competition is going to figure out what they're doing and adopt the same technology, and they're trying to protect that 300% increase in their ROI. Understandable. Just know it's a software company in the United States working in a very specific niche market selling a SaaS software solution. Now, what they had is they had marketing automation. They then came to one of our user groups. It's their user conference, and I gave a class on how to really effectively utilize this technology. They had already seen really successful gains from just automating all these different processes. What they really wanted to drill into was how to increase specifically lead nurturing programs. So I gave them a course on lead nurturing programs. They took those key pieces, went back, and then changed what already was a successful campaign, and those changes increased at 300% revenue via email. They saw an increase via email, an increase of revenue from email by 300% from those changes. That's in addition to the increase they already had. So it's first off, you can get massive gains just by implementing. Then you can go through and optimize and get a whole other set of massive gains. So this is a very, very, very powerful type of technology, and it's the combination of data and technology that equals this success. So now if you really want to get into this technology, we're going to open it up in just a second for questions and kind of go through a bunch of different questions. But I first want to say, how do you get started? Well, the easiest way to get started is to go ahead and contact people like McRae and Company. These people are very, very knowledgeable about marketing automation. They work with a lot of different companies all over the UK, and they're helping them see these kind of an increase in returns. Now, I work with Pardot, so I'd hope that you'd look at Pardot as a solution. Is it the only solution? No. McRae and Company can help you out with evaluating what solution is going to be best for you, and then helping you really see those massive returns. All right, so now we're going to start and open it up for some questions. So if you guys have questions, please feel free to go in and type in any questions, and we will go through a couple of different slides for you. So first question I've got is, does this type of technology integrate with any existing CRM systems? The answer is yes. Pardot specifically integrates with 4 different CRM systems out of the box. It's going to integrate with a Sugar CRM system. It's going to integrate with a Salesforce.com type system. It's going to integrate with a NetSuite CRM as well as Microsoft CRM. Now, there's also an API that is open that will allow you to build out any type of custom integration you like into many, many, many different platforms. So it really just depends on what technology you're using and what technology can tie into it. Now, there's also other marketing automation platforms that can tie into other CRMs. Just be careful of what CRM you have. Look at the sophistication of how long do you plan on being on that CRM. Usually the key thing is that most fully baked marketing automation platforms are going to be tying into the major CRMs and the major platforms. It's just because that those usually have a larger technology base, and usually if you get to a basic level of sophistication where you need marketing automation, you've probably already figured out that you need a little bit more sophisticated CRM. Now, those people that have homegrown their own and built their own, that's totally fine. We can also integrate with those as well. Another good question is, what kind of a cost should you be looking at for adopting this type of technology? That's a really good question, and they really range all over the board. You're going to find that you're looking at really varying costs depending on the size of your databases and the size of your marketing departments. So it's usually going to scale with the size of your department. look at anywhere from $1,000, or you're looking at somewhere in pounds of like the 700 pounds per month. It's kind of the entry level into looking at this technology. But if you combine that with the ROI that we've just seen, it's really kind of a funny ROI. We really, really rarely ever talk about ROI on these type of campaigns. It's because the technology is so new that when you're adopting something like this and you're seeing a 900% increase in revenue, it's very funny to say that you can get a 900% increase in revenue off of a 700-pound investment. That typically doesn't make sense. That's usually an email that you get from a Nigerian prince saying that he's got some money that he needs you to hold in a bank account for him. So it's really kind of a funny ROI. It's so crazy that we usually don't talk about that in terms of ROI. Great. Another question we've got is, what type of emails, or if we're currently doing emails, how is this different from a current email that we're currently sending? It's a really good question. Emails that you are currently sending are usually from a blast standpoint. Emails that you're sending from a nurturing standpoint are a very different type of email. It's usually very targeted. The main difference between automated systems and blast systems is the following. Marketing automation is made to engage with people on a one-to-one basis. Mass marketing, or email blasting, is used to engage with a one-to-many relationship. The whole concept of social media is the concept of engaging with an individual as an individual, right? It's talking and having that one-to-one communication. It's having that ability is why social media is so effective. Now, the ROI from social media is all over the place. People are debating, is there ROI? Do I have to do this? Do I need to do this? And that's on a case-by-case, company-by-company basis. Email marketing is very different. Everyone does email marketing. It is the #1 way to communicate with your customer base or your consumer base. Now, because of that, when you're doing email marketing, traditionally it's been on that one-to-many format, which is very impersonal. So think about even in your daily basis. When you get emails and they're very impersonal, do you feel that they're talking to you as an individual? No. Hence, your engagement is very low. When you change that to an email that you received from a friend, that's a one-to-one communication. It's very different. If you receive a one-to-one communication from a company, it's very engaging. Hence, your increase is much higher. And so that's what you're seeing is a switch from a one-to-many to a one-to-one format. And that's really where you're seeing a lot of these increases in marketing automation. And at this time, I'm going to ask Scott, if you're still on the line, to please jump in. And if you want to share anything about what you guys have seen from some adoption of marketing automation from some of your clients, this would be a great time to share. If not, we can handle another couple questions.
Yeah, I'm here, Matt. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, seeing as I've got you on the phone and we've got an audience, I've got 4 questions for you, and I've also, I guess the last one we can share a bit of the perspective about what we've learned from working with companies here. But my first question is, all the industry research suggests that marketing automation technology will take about 50% of the CRM marketplace over the next 5 years. The US is a few years ahead of us in this. What's the update from the US? What's your experience there at the moment?
Is the question about marketing automation replacing CRM or being utilized with CRM, or being? I'm not following the question.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying the US is a couple of years ahead of us in their adoption of marketing automation than it is here. And so really, What are you seeing in the US in terms of the uptake and companies embracing marketing automation?
Yeah, great question. We're seeing a very fast uptake. So to give you guys some background, so I first started with Pardot as on the sales side. I always had a passion for marketing and has always been really intrigued with marketing. And so when we first started selling marketing automation, this is years ago, not too far ago. When I say years ago, we're talking 4 years ago. We would call up and ask somebody, what are your plans for marketing automation? And they would say, what is marketing automation? In this baffling, I've never heard that term before. What do you even mean by that? And so that was what we used to get as a response. Now if you were to call somebody in the U.S. and ask, what are your plans for marketing automation? You'll probably get a detailed response of, it's something that we're evaluating, we haven't implemented it yet, or yes, we've implemented it, this is what we're using, or no, that's going to be on the immediate timeline, let's set something up to talk about this. It's a very different marketplace. The adoption is at a very increased rate. So what you're seeing is a large push by a lot of marketing automation vendors, hence the market is getting educated very quickly. with that education, we're also seeing a lot of promotion of numbers like you've seen from Restaurant.com. And this is not a one-time number. These are numbers that just about any company you can talk to that's doing marketing automation are seeing very, very large returns on their investment. And so it's quickly being adopted. The actual number we're looking at is somewhere at the end of the year, I think will be somewhere between 15 and 20%. It's probably going to be a little bit lower than that, but you're looking somewhere in the high teens of an adoption rate. Over the next couple of years, they are expecting that to increase very, very, very quickly. If you're talking about a hockey stick growth is what a lot of people talk about, exponential growth. You're looking at we're at the middle and getting up to the top of that extremely fast growth, where you're going to see over the next couple of years the largest majority getting in the adoption. So if you're looking at the technology adoption curve, you've got your your innovators and your early adopters and your early majority. That's the first half of the people that adopt. We've already gotten through the innovators. That's usually about the 5% range. We're now into the early adopters and early majority. And so it's really the most progressive bleeding edge companies have already adopted it. The really cutting edge technology companies have almost all adopted it. And then the just slightly behind that crowd, the more progressive companies are getting into it. And you can also see this by vertical. The most progressive and leading edge tech verticals are the tech and software vertical. Majority of all of those companies use marketing automation in some capacity. You're now seeing marketing automation to flow into other verticals that typically are slower to adopt technology. You're looking at financial segments adopting technology. You're looking at housing segments adopting technology. You're looking at a lot of different segments that traditionally are slow to adopt technology, now getting into this at a pretty heavy basis. Does that kind of help out, Scott?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, I guess it's where we are, but fast forward a year, 18 months. My second question is, Pardot is obviously the recognized industry leader for what you would call small and medium-sized businesses, so businesses that turn over less than 100 million. But what does that mean? What does that mean for the business? And when when you're being evaluated against other competing platforms, who do you tend to win against and who do you lose against? I mean, our experience from working with Adam in London is that 30% of Pardot's business just walks in as a result of marketing, but 30% comes from unhappy Marketo customers and 30% comes from HubSpot customers that have been missold. So two questions in there. Why, what does it mean for SMEs and where does the business come from?
Yeah, it's a great question. So to answer the first part, what does it mean for an SME? The main thing it means for an SME is two things. One is most SMEs have a limited marketing department. You don't have unlimited resources and you don't have an unlimited staff. Usually you're looking at between 1 and 5. Large SMEs might have 10 marketers in a department. Those people have very, very, very varied jobs. If we can remove and automate a lot of those positions, it frees those people up to get creative and then really engage on a much different level and generate much more leads. It means doing more with less. That's the main underlying theme. It's being able to do a lot more with a lot less. So that's really what it means to the SMEs. In terms of where are a lot of our leads and where are a lot of our customers coming from, a lot of it comes from, we compete mainly with the big three, Marketo, Eloqua, Pardot's the third in the big three. And then we also compete a lot with HubSpot. When I say compete, that means they're usually in the deals because of these companies spend a large majority of marketing. There's a large marketing push for marketing automation firms. What we usually find is that once you get into the internals of a company and really start figuring out what these companies need and what their needs are, Pardot is usually a best fit from two sides. One, an ease of use side, is whenever you're adopting a new technology, how easy is it to adopt is usually the first thing. So ease of adoption is really one of the big winning key components of Pardot. The second is what type of sophistication can I then grow into easily down the road. And that's the other big thing that we find that a lot of people enjoy with Pardot. And that's why we have a lot of people migrate over to Pardot. One, either being because of ease of use. That's why we have a lot of people migrate from Marketo. And then two is sophistication. That's why we have a lot of people migrate over from HubSpot. And so those two things combined have really made us the leader in the SME segment. And that's really kind of how we've made our stake and how we kind of keep that position.
Okay, third question. And I'm interested in what you see in the US. because when we work with businesses, when we run, kind of 3 or 4 workshops a quarter on marketing automation, and at the end of the workshops, we often have about half an hour to an hour of question and answers where people really share, what it is that they're trying to do in the business and the problems that they're having. We see a lot of businesses they recognize the need and the desire for the type of functionality that marketing automation platforms deliver, but where they start with trying to force their CRM to do that type of thing, to do the sort of stuff that they want to do. They try to get Salesforce or NetSuite or Sugar or whatever it is that they're running to try and deliver some of this functionality, and they spend a lot of money and they end up failing because the CMS system is built to do the CMS stuff great. It's not built to do the marketing automation great. What's your experience of that in the US?
No, it's the exact same. And it's not, the problem is easy, right? If you've got an existing tool and you've spent money, and usually a CRM is a large investment of capital. So what you've usually got is someone saying, hey, there's a new technology, let's invest in it. The pushback is, hey, we've already got this existing technology, let's see what it can do first. And that's usually the pushback that most people have. Once they figure out they can't do it, they then rapidly adopt what can do it. So that's usually the first stage of somebody figuring out that they need marketing automation. Some people completely bypass that. People that do an effective evaluation, ask the right people, will hear those horror stories of, we tried to do this with a CRM, it didn't work, and so then we moved over to a marketing automation platform. So they usually skip that stage. It's just an education stage, and like we said earlier, it's the people that typically adopt things first and try the most progressive companies are going to really figure out what works and what doesn't work, and they're usually going to start with what doesn't work first and then end up with what does work. And that's really kind of, I guess, to your point, is it's pretty common over here as well. But usually people always end up with a marketing automation platform, because what's going to happen is they get really frustrated, it doesn't work, they get kind of jaded, and then they quickly go and adopt the technology. And that's then when they notice ease of use is one of the big key things as well.
Okay, last question, and probably a note to everyone else as well, is that if there's something that you want to ask Matt, then you kind of probably got about maybe for the next 5 or 10 minutes to put that down. Otherwise, after this one, we can wrap it up. So the leading kind of research reports on the challenges to adopting, it's pretty comprehensive functionality in terms of the platform, and it dramatically changes the way that businesses go about organizing their sales and marketing effort. But the major challenges are always identified as the quality of the database and the ongoing quality of the database, and it being good enough to really make marketing automation work. Or number 2 would be, I don't have enough good content. And number 3, just the sheer operational challenges from a process point of view of embracing marketing automation. Our experience is that the quality of the database is something that needs to be worked on all the time. The second question about we don't have enough good content, we find is a bit of a red herring, because businesses have got great content for marketing themselves, and there's enough there to start and to get going with and develop new stuff then as you go. And the third point around operational effectiveness and operational processes is really just like point number 1, it's just work in progress. What have you found with US companies in terms of their main challenges implementing marketing automation?
Yeah, those are really 3 common challenges. And those are usually challenges people are debating about whether or not to start or not. It's because they don't feel that they have those, and so they're delaying starting before they get those things fixed. Data is always a constant issue. No matter what, data is always going to be an issue and always will be an issue. There's some really good tools. Fresh Address is a really good tool to help you with clean up your database. Ringlead's another really good tool. The thing is that you don't have to have a perfect database. As long as you've got an email, you're good to go to start, because what you don't have is behavioral tracking. That's the main thing that you're going to be using for automation, is behavior. And so you will get that once you have an automation tool. So that's the first place to start. The next thing with content is, I agree with you, is that content is not content, it's content. There's so many different types of content. When you're doing marketing automation, the main thing you need to keep in mind is that you're optimizing for a link click, not necessarily a full download where somebody fills out a form. It's because we can track things differently. We don't require somebody to fill out a form just to know who's doing it. We can track a link. And so a link can be to your article, it can be an article on somebody else's site. That's content that you still have access to. And so it's a very different type of thought about content and how we utilize content. And the third is operational, and that's true. It's always going to be operational. It's people just might not understand how processes should be. So really getting down and sitting down with somebody like McRae and Company and getting just an overview of kind of what should we look at, how do we get set up, having them walk you through, sitting in one of those webinars or trainings that you do on a quarterly basis, are all things that we suggest. And we really highly recommend that when you get started with somebody or get started with a platform, make sure you first off understand what you're doing, have somebody that can give you some guidance, and always have somebody that you can reach out to. And that's really what McRae & Co. helps out with a lot as well. So.
Yeah, well, look, that's brilliant. Matt, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to us in the UK, and also to everyone who joined us on this webinar. I'll make sure that the link to the recorded version of this webinar is emailed to everybody so that you can share it with the relevant people in your company if that's appropriate. But I'd like to say thanks very much, Matt, and thanks very much everyone else.
Thanks, guys. All right, bye-bye.
Cheers, bye.